We're back today with the crew to finish talking about the draft recommendations that we started talking about at our meeting last week. We've got, I think we probably got like not even maybe a third of the way through really with our last conversation. So Brenna, do you want to take us back to where we were and just kind of kick off from there?
Yes, I am just pulling up the document we need.
And I think I need to allow you to share too, so we'll do that.
Sorry, my computer's being a little laggy today.
Okay. I can share on my end if that's easier.
Just give me one second.
Brenda, what document are you in?
I'm in the working document I was going to pull the strategies out.
Terrific.
Yes.
While you're
Do you
doing
want,
that.
Brenna, I can do the PowerPoint if you want, if that would
We
be
can do the
easier.
PowerPoint too, that's fine.
Well, you guys are looking for that. I know Hampton was with us last week. Meg was on. Trying to think. Karen Barry, I don't know, were you with us last week or no?
Yes.
Yeah.
You were as well. Okay, so I think
She
the only
was.
new person here today is Catherine Otto. Hello, Catherine, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm the Frontline Action Plan Coordinator at MDAR, so the Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resource.
Yeah, so Catherine's been doing a lot of really good stuff across the whole Commonwealth, but she's kept up to date with our project and is going to be a great contribution, I think, to today's discussion. Oh, looks like we've got an iPhone guest as well. We'll see who that is.
That's me.
Oh, is that you as well?
Yeah, sorry,
Okay.
I just need to
Good to know. No, good to know. All right, so Brenna and Lydia, whenever you guys are ready.
Brenna, tell me if you want me to which slide you'd like me to start on, and I think, Joanne, I'm going to need you to make me a co-host to be able to share my screen. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Do on the list.
I think we got to 1.7.
There you go.
Okay.
Sorry about this. My computer is not working with me today.
Okay. And I will go ahead and share this screen. Can everybody see?
Yes.
Great. All right, so we're on 1A7, is that right? Brenna, or
yeah, that's where we got to last time.
okay. All right. So I'm trying to get to the doc with my notes, and now it made me sad. Sorry. Let me get back to that. Holy moly, I broke it. Sorry for the tech problems today, y'all. Oh,
it's apparently a thing with all of us.
I Okay, so 1A7. So can everybody see that now?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So we kind of left talking about additional funding tools at the municipal or regional level for farmland protection on land that is ineligible for current state programs. And this was, a recommendation directly in response to the fact that APRs are very much about soils. And so finding other tools that would help working farms that are not under protection become protected for farming in the future. Any discussion on that?
So are you thinking about, so I wasn't clear with this one, whether you're, and maybe it's both, whether you're suggesting there needs to be additional funding models or there needs to be additional programs, things like APR, but not APR. So I wasn't sure if it was one or both of those things.
Well,
I think, oh, go ahead, Brenna.
I was gonna say, I think a little bit it would be both, like more funding to support farmland protection for land that could be in the APR program, but maybe there's not state funding to back that up with the federal state match. And then additional funding or a similar program like an APR program for land that's like smaller or doesn't meet the criteria in other ways for the state program. I think there's
We've
a
got,
Go,
yeah,
go ahead. What's your question?
Mhm.
So I think just one thing to think about that, there are other programs. So there are 3 different mechanisms for protection of farmland in the state. There's the APR program, which is the state funded. Yes, there is an element of soils, but there is actually a more diverse criteria. About a year ago, we actually diversified kind of what we're looking for. So it's not just about soils. There's also private APRs. And in the last year, MDAR has been promoting and kind of sharing and kind of like clarifying expectations for that. Private APRs can be less than 5 acres. They can have less, there's a lot more flexibility in those programs to adapt. And there's also CRs, which are ag friendly. So I think it would probably be useful to split it into 2. One, expanding awareness of the different mechanisms for protecting farmland for different purposes. And I think what you're looking at is, what is the purpose for protecting farmland? That is a big difference. Like if you're talking about commercial, larger scale, or are you talking about more food security, smaller scale, urban ag, and a bunch of other things? Like that's why it can be important sometimes to like adapt the mechanism to what the needs are of that farm property. And then another thing, you're looking at funding. And I think funding can also come from different sources, not just AMDAR. But I would say don't restrict it to municipal and regional. I'd say like not, just diversify awareness and increase different funding pools. We always need more funding for protection. But I think sometimes it could be a different state program. It could be, some people have used MVP, for example, to protect farms, and it's all about awareness more than creating new programs. But sometimes we do need to create a bigger funding source.
Yeah.
So that's just something.
And I think, in the document, we do talk a lot about the need to actively track, map, and inventory land that's so maybe just backing up for you so we're working on, which we went on before, was tracking, mapping, and inventory land that's in 61A to monitor, and also kind of build more collaboration with land trusts and municipalities and AgComs to be able to be ready to either use all of the available tools at hand. And then the next strategy is around building capacity within land trusts for more formalized channels of collaboration that can be both with farmers, with the extension, and by locals, to make sure that there's that direct education around different CR tools that can be used. I think this one is very much, and I'm just trying to get down, that then there's a recommendation to support agricultural land conservation efforts through partnerships with land trusts, municipalities, and the APR program. And those are, there's some sub bullets there around right to farm bylaws, ag commissions, working on CPA funds, things like that. Making sure that farms are in active agricultural use through planning. We do bring CPA funding. And then we talk about leasing. I think we could, if we want to, under this one, the sub bullet on our end is work with land trusts or other public-private partnerships to fundraise from private donors for farmland protection. I think this was kind of brought up last time. We maybe ended here trying to think about other ways. I mean, so for example, I want to say, was it Howard that said last time that there were just some really incredible donors that came to the table for one of Wildland's largest acquisitions of commercial working land. And we were just trying to make sure that that continues to be a piece of the strategy as well. But any other feedback on that?
I think it might be helpful maybe just to share the document version of this.
Yeah. Do
'Cause
you?
that, yeah, which I'm trying to find. Oh, I have that if you want me to share
Yeah.
it.
Brenna sent that out on Friday.
Jill and I actually are in there. Tina
Oh, she's breaking up.
Hold
Sherry.
on, Brenna, you're breaking up. I can't hear you.
finally did.
Jill, can you hear her?
No, Brenna's breaking up. I don't know if she can hear
Hello,
us.
do I have the ability to share my screen?
I can stop sharing. Yep.
You
Okay,
should be able to, yep.
is that working?
There we go,
Yeah.
yep. You just
We
need
can-
to zoom in a bit because it's kind of small.
Of course, yep. Is that better?
Go a
A
little bit
little more?
bigger.
Yeah,
I can. How about that?
can you
Is
go
that
one more?
better?
If you could
I
go
think
one
so.
more.
Yeah.
Joanne, I'm with you with the small.
I'm with you both too. I'm looking at it on a separate big screen, so I'm not
Oh,
seeing
that's
it the
great.
same.
that's
Much
good,
better.
yeah.
Thanks.
All right, we're at 175%.
Nice.
Yay.
Okay, that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah, I like that addition.
super.
And I would just maybe change on the funding. Instead of saying additional funding tools, additional funding mechanisms or something, like just so you're kind of disconnecting what the protection type is versus the method to find funding. I feel like those are two different buckets, and sometimes I've noticed that some people like conflate the two. But yeah, I like that. Thank you.
Any other comments on that one from anybody? Okay, want to move on?
I'm sorry, I was muted. This is Hampton Watkins. I chair the Land Use and Acquisition Committee in Plymouth. And I, with regard to the CPA, we've been challenged by trying to use CPA funds to buy down for affordable housing, um, and improve our uh, percentage of affordable units to approach the 10% that the minimum that the state is targeting. So that's put a big strain on CPA funding that might otherwise be used for farmland protection. So we work closely with the Wildlands Trust and trying to preserve both open space and farmland. But um, when you've got competing demands in the community, I think that it presents a particular challenge. For example, we have a parcel of actually two parcels that are contiguous and have about 133 acres in 61A right now in South Plymouth. And the challenge is uh, where does the town get the funding when our CPA is overextended currently, um, the CPC funds are overextended. So it it's the it's hard to find that balance, and I think that that's important to remember.
Jill and the Barrett team, I'm gonna leave it to you guys to kind of, jump through to the next strategy and stuff when you're ready. So just let us know.
Okay, great. Lydia, would you like to go through it? Because you might have certain things that you want to key in on.
Sure. And I'm sorry, but I kind of froze while Hampton was finishing his statement, so I didn't quite get that last bit. And I'm sorry. I don't know if we addressed your concerns.
I think Hampton, jump in if I'm wrong, but in summary, Hampton was saying that CPA funds are often competing between the housing needs of a community
it.
and the open space needs.
Okay, got it. Thank you. And so one of the tools that we had spoken about and that had been brought up and at the Ag Com Roundtable is that Dartmouth's Ag Commission is actually creating a pot of funds for land acquisition that is basically CPA funds that they are going to be putting into a separate pot. And so that could be a potential recommendation to explore if we wanted to add that to strategy 1A7. I don't know, Jill and Brenna, what you think about that. We mentioned CPA funds in a couple of our strategies.
Yeah, I believe we do have a strategy. I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. We do have a strategy that is to create an ag preservation fund bucket through CPA to sort of address that. So we can
Great.
we can put a note under 1A7 to
To
reference.
see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks, Brenna. Okay, and then the next strategy is 1A8, which is exploring affordable housing options for farmer housing in concert with farm conservation land through the use of CPA funding, APRs, and other funding models. This is just coming from the need to, especially for first generation farmers, or even farm families that are bringing on new generations of farmers within their families, making sure housing is represented. This area, from the work we did in understanding through interviews, but also through AFT's report, is incredibly, it is just really, there's a lot of pressure for development here. And also housing values have increased immensely here. So making sure that farmer housing is part of our strategy is one of the pieces that we wanted to include as a recommendation.
So how do you guys, because I think one of the big things that we've talked a lot about is as specific as possible with a lot of these strategies and recommendations so that folks really know how to pursue implementation. So how do you see that actually playing out? So is this a case where there's a parcel of land, it's being acquired for farmland, for active production of farmland, and then let's say it's Wildlands Trust, they acquire the land, they keep, 80%, 90% of it in production for farmland, and then set aside 10% to build a house that's then affordable for the farmer that farms that land? Or are you speaking more broadly to just promoting affordable housing in communities where there are farmland? Because I'm trying to identify whether there's a mechanism through which you could restrict housing specific to farmers, and I'm not aware of there being one.
So I think the first scenario you talk about, if a land trust or a more public body were to own farmland, that is what, and potentially it's a place without any land. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but most of the APRs pull housing lots out of the actual APR, or they used to at least. And so, we're just trying to recommend that housing be considered as part of farmland preservation, because if you don't, a lot of the Lakeville and Middleborough land that people are leasing from MDAR right now, folks are traveling up to an hour to be able to use that land. So we're just trying to promote the fact that affordable housing is part of viability and farm resilience. Um, but I would say it's very important if there is land that is owned potentially by like wildlands or a nonprofit body for farmer housing to be considered as part of that. There are some examples of from up here at least where like new first gen farmers are leasing land, have long-term ground leases, but cannot actually build on the land. Like you can't do it financially while it's allowed. It's like, what is the financial relationship? And this kind of goes back to the leasing piece, which I think is up. And maybe we want to put this actually under leasing, is just trying to make sure that there are ways that farm viability can be built into leases around capital improvements. Because that was one of the things we saw the most, is that when folks are leasing land, there are lease tools that will allow farmers to actually invest in infrastructure. And then there are lease tools that sometimes discourage that. And so we want to make sure we have the right infrastructure on our farms in the region. And we want to make sure that folks who are using leases kind of know how to use those tools that support farmers investing in infrastructure, if that makes sense. And I think housing is part of that. I don't know if I answered your question.
We had chatted about this at CMAP too, and it was also a discussion of like, do we need to like create some sort of model? Because, is this a situation where, specifically for agricultural use, like, does there need to be almost like something different that hasn't been tried before to be created? Because it's such a limiting factor here locally. So that we also had a similar discussion.
Yeah, because I can see it maybe working if you're talking about acquiring a new parcel and it either has an existing house on it, then you could, lease out the farmland with the house at an affordable rate to a potential farmer or a farmer at that point. But I know in some communities, like for example, in Easton, there has actually been some discussion about using existing conservation land, not specifically farmland, but just conservation land in general, to see if there are any opportunities to actually build out a little bit of housing that's affordable along the perimeters or in a sustainable and kind of open space friendly way. But then you get to a point where you can't restrict to a certain group that housing. It would just be, eligibility based on affordability or income levels, things like that. So I don't know, Jill or Brenna, if you guys have any thoughts on what this looks like, but it almost sounds to me like there is no model and maybe there needs to be a model.
Yeah,
Catherine,
that's
do
what
you?
but this is something that has come up in multiple conversations that we've had, and I think at the listening session in Lakeville for MDAR it came up, and I don't know the whole. John, you might know if this is, the housing on APRs may have always been an issue, or maybe it's coming to light. I'm not sure, like the history or where it's going, but it does seem to be something that people keep asking about.
Housing has been ping-ponged back and forth over the years. I think Catherine could probably speak to where it's being considered presently. There were strong efforts to keep housing off of APR land just to make things cleaner. But then it raises the issues that have been discussed. Where is the farmer going to live? So, I mean, that's I'm agreeing with the fact that, yes, it's been an item of controversy for the whole time I was at MDAR and long before that.
Yeah, and I would, like, just thinking about what you were discussing, I would be hesitant to put infrastructure for the farm business in with housing, because housing does have additional like nuances to it, and like there's just many different ways to look at it. Like there's two sides of the coin. Yes, particularly if you have any kind of animals, it's good to have the farmer on site. But if you add, for example, a house into something, it decreases the affordability of that parcel for someone to actually access the land. So there's so many different things that go into that. I would keep them separate, just because the push and the strategy to improve kind of awareness of infrastructure, I think that's really good. That sounds like a really good thing to be doing. Just don't conflate it with the housing. And I would say be careful to kind of just be aware that there are different perspectives because of what makes it good, whether you include the housing or don't include the housing. And it's exactly correct what you said. Like there isn't a solution. That's why we're still stuck on this. This is why Farmland Action Plan also is like, what do we do with housing? Like, we know this is part of the issue, and it's a bigger issue than just farming. So, yeah, you may not be able to get as specific as you want on this, but acknowledging it is an issue that you want to try and address, and maybe strategizing, maybe trying some things out could be a great way forward. Yeah, it's not
So maybe the wording of the recommendation here is to more generally ensure or promote or enhance, whatever you want to call it, affordable
And I'm
housing
wondering,
in proximity to farmlands.
Rita has mentioned a couple of examples in the chat. And I think workforce housing is also different. So maybe we need to pull that out as well. So maybe we try to expand this recommendation to, yes, like Brendan's doing, like find a little bit more information around the pain points here. It definitely seems to be something that is challenging for folks, and then try to create some recommendations to maybe look at some neighboring communities that have done other work. And then I think, Meg, if you and Susan are kind of starting to take on some of this, could we put this in a recommendation that you all continue to be part of the conversation and at the table, either leading in with OCPC?
Yeah, I'll shoot her an email today about it.
I just think the more specific we can get in these, the more then you all can be like, okay, we know that we're going to start meeting about this, as a next step. Okay. Is it okay if I move on, Jill? Okay. This next one, I think Jill heard this at a APR session, and we wanted to put it out there and see if we feel like this is something that's important, which is to work to get any dormant agricultural land back into active production. So this would include part of the mapping work to identify areas that are in need of restoration, and then start to work with landowners to identify paths forward, and then also working with land trusts and ag organizations to make sure that there are opportunities to use conservation land that was previously used for agriculture back into a working landscape. The things we talked about were, making sure owners of APRs understood the SARA grant program and other programs that could help them invest in their land if they had fallen on harder times around maintaining their land, especially when folks are aging or maybe things have been transitioned. I think sometimes that is when properties, don't have that continuity of care and stewardship. So that was our final strategy any feedback on that, edits?
Yeah, I think we started touching upon this at our last meeting, and in a way, it would almost be awesome if there was like an MDAR task force that could work with some of our land conservation groups, because it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy where the land conservation groups are the ones that have the access, and the ability to really hone in on the donors with money, right? So then they're working with those donors, they're securing the money, they're securing the land, but then they oftentimes don't have the ability to properly steward that land or to kind of understand the process of taking the next steps to get it back into working agriculture. And so all these municipalities are basically dependent on the land trusts, and we keep on talking about them and their donors, but then we're essentially making a library or a collection of all this agricultural land that's then essentially locked up. And I know that I had touched upon, we have a farmer in this county who right now is really, it's probably going to end up in a court situation about what they were kind of promised agriculturally about a piece of land that was purchased, through a land trust. It had been an agricultural land. So it's almost I wish there was a task force or some other level, because a lot of times, again, I worked for a land trust for over 12 years. And at they are private landowners. At the end of the day, it's like their way or the highway. But then this is like restricting the ability for a lot of this land to be utilized after they essentially told these donors that we're going to conserve this agricultural land to be used, and then it is not used. So if we could have some almost like not a governing body, but just some other like mediation group that could like work with these organizations to kind of like help get that land back into the hands of people who can actually farm it.
We have some land trusts, smaller ones typically in our region that don't really want active agriculture on their conservation land. So I think
Yeah.
part of it maybe too is education and outreach to land trusts to help them to see that active agricultural production is still a part of conservation, and this is how the two are linked together. And what else was I going to say about that? I also think that, and it's not just about, sorry, two thoughts. So first, when you're talking about dormant agricultural land too, we've talked a little bit about this in Easton. What is dormant agricultural land? Are you talking about land that's been used as farmland in the last 5 years that's been put out of use? Or are you talking about, how far are you going to go back to identify dormant farmland? Because there are definitely parcels that are either owned privately still, or in some instances in our area controlled by a college or a municipality that could be used for agriculture, but they might not necessarily have a history of being used as agriculture, but they're in the right area for it. So I think that's maybe something to kind of broaden a little bit in the strategy
Yeah.
as well too, that I think
Like
there's
create definition of like, what, or like prioritize, some sort of like priority given to like certain pieces of land that like have like a high value for their agricultural potential.
Yeah, so like when we're doing open space plans, we typically talk a lot about soils of, in some instances, local importance if the community has done that work, or of state importance. So we're often talking about soils again with that kind of thing and trying to overlap like, hey, do you guys have any large parcels that maybe you might want to acquire that's in the right soil position?
Yep.
But I think that's kind of part of this discussion too, because we do there are parcels in our region that were actively farmed in the last, 5 to 10 years that just have dropped out. But there's more land than just that available for potential agriculture.
Yeah.
Yeah. Catherine, go ahead, jump right in. Oh, you're muted.
There we go. So another thing to think about, I love that you're talking about bringing dormant back or ones which have kind of passed something, but I think an emerging trend is also the land that is becoming less actively used. So I think we also need to get ahead of that side of things, because that is also how we're losing farmland. Like as someone ages out and they may not have had the best transition plan, and so their land, as they slowly reduce their capacity to farm, they're slowly working back. Or, for example, climate has changed, so therefore this field is now always too wet, or this one's always too dry. So I think I love this strategy, and there might want to be a parallel one or just a component of this, which is also, it's far easier to prevent something from fully being kind of not abandoned, but like set aside, than like preventing that is easier than bringing it back from something that has already fallen out. So I think that could be an extra thing to consider. And that could be a more immediate focus if we think about the aging of our farmers and the changing of our climate. So.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because we did ask in our survey about how much of their land is actually under production, and there was, there were several respondents who were under 100%, and also about transition planning as well too. Most hadn't. So
I'm wondering too if this would be, and I'm trying to see if we have this earlier around AgComs, but my local AgCom is trying to identify municipally owned land that has been farmed in the past but is not currently under lease, to see if they can do that. We could maybe add, like that's currently brush mode, but maybe getting a hay farmer in, or getting it would totally depend on the type of agriculture, but we could add something around working with municipalities to
encourage
also
agriculture use of
their land. Yeah, because I know there used to be a big effort for urban ag, at least with DCR. And John, that was with you when you were commissioner, but maybe I don't know what those efforts are around state-owned land other than the leasing program now.
So on that front, we do have 1,200 acres of state-owned lands which are being licensed out for thing, and then through the Farmland Partnership Program, which Joanne's very familiar with, we're actually funding World Farmers and the Food Systems Collaborative to do work in Boston metro areas, so 101 MAPC towns, to encourage municipalities to get more involved with land licensing. Once they've tested out in that area, those resources to help encourage our towns will be available. So the idea is, we do think this is important, and we do have a project which is working on it. Like, what are the challenges? How do we encourage our towns? How do we provide the technical assistance? How would you reduce the barriers? So we do, in the Farmland Action Plan, we recognize it as important, and we are trying to fund efforts to bring that back.
Okay. So then let us reference that directly and,
yes,
say to follow that, and also bring it when it's time, like bring that to the municipalities in the study area. Does that make sense for you both, Joanne and Catherine?
For sure.
And Hampton, I see your hand up. So when they're done, Hampton, I see your hand up.
Thank you.
Lydia, are you guys all set? Okay, go ahead, Hampton.
Just as a thought, one of the means by which you can, I think, fairly quickly suss out farmland and so on by parcel is simply going to the assessor in each of the towns and looking at the land use codes that have been assigned to each parcel. And depending upon the town, there is limited latitude for the assignment of land use codes. It's really in compliance with the Mass DOR and the Division of Local Services, the DLS. They have standardized land use codes, and by using those to and they're associated with individual parcels, you can pull very rapidly through GIS all of the agricultural lands in a municipality, and then determine just exactly what those are, whether they're agricultural in the sense of being in chapter land or not in chapter land. It is a useful tool that gives you a quick and not flawless, but pretty robust means by which to get a sense of parcels, contiguous parcels. You might have one that is dormant and the other one that is not that's currently in production, and that would be you might see if there's some way to leverage the adjacencies.
Okay.
We've been looking at that, and it seems to work pretty well.
Great.
That's roughly.
And what?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that's roughly the method we use in open space plans on how to list parcels.
Right.
And I guess maybe in theory, depending on your assessor's office, you might be able to go back in history to see what agricultural land has been changed out of agricultural land using codes if they go back. But it's tough to identify what new land could potentially be used using the assessor data.
Okay.
Right.
One of the case studies we mentioned in the report is also Essex County Greenbelt partnered with a local college to have their GIS students become interns to continue to do this mapping through that strategy that you were saying, Hampton. It's just like trying to make sure that we all have a really active grasp on what's happening and what might be up for change. So I think that's great. We can kind of bring up more mapping and GIS. We can reference that in this section as well.
It's a great opportunity to go back and integrate our planning too, Lydia. I mean, the things that Joanne's been talking about with open space planning, and going back to what Meg said about getting some type of a group together I mean, your ag commission's a perfect place to seat that. And the fact that an ag commission is supposed to have a 5-year working plan. Who knows the lie of the land better than people on the ag commission usually? Because they still practice a lot of kitchen table and back porch diplomacy. Let's sit down, have a cup of coffee, and talk about things. And I think doing that and having them sit down in the context of, your open space committee, your master plan committee, whatever else you have going, and really thinking about land use and historical land use in your community, you can put together a kind of local farmland prioritization plan, just like you do an open space prioritization plan, in your open space committee. They don't have to be exclusive, at all. And it would promote probably better intergovernmental cooperation between the boards.
Yeah, that's helpful.
Yeah, and I know that MDR and DCS have been working to try and integrate a little bit more farmland protection and agricultural issues into open space planning. But I think there are so many tools out there that help communities identify parcels of ecological value, which are often then used to prioritize open space goals and things. I'm not aware of really any tools that you could use in the same way to identify farmland.
Resilient Mass is working towards
Who
that.
is?
Resilient Mass, the Resilient Mass plan from 2022 identified that, and it's like an ongoing project. I believe
Are they actually working on it?
it's in the design phase currently.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yep.
So maybe that's something we can reference, is that having a tool available that would help communities would be great.
Great. All right, should we go on to providing support for farmers? Is everybody ready to move forward? Jill, do you mind scrolling down just a bit? So in this section, goal B, this is really about supporting farmers for farm viability. And we feel like there are some amazing players in this arena in the region. So really wanting to make sure that municipalities understand the resources available for farmers that exist in the region, including CMAP and Plymouth County Extension and the AgComs. If there are others that we need to list, please let us know. I mean, we were thinking about just kind of the local ones. There's MDR all as well, but just thinking about folks that are really focused on the study area. Because these are the folks that really understand your region and the challenges that farmers are facing best. Then the next strategy is to create or expand access to land, capital, and training for new and emerging farmers, with particular attention to farmers from historically underrepresented communities. And so this is really kind of going back up to the top around like trying to understand folks that have not been able to historically get onto land, get leases, things like that, and working to make sure that land trusts, conservation groups, and municipalities understand the challenges that those farmers might have. I think one of the best ways to do that, again, is kind of going back up to like the CMAPs and the Plymouth County Extension, and then working to make sure that their leases are meeting those farmers' needs. So, again, you have a lot of the experts at the table already. Like Meg probably could tell you many of the reasons why, some beginning farmers, women farmers have not been able to get, socially disadvantaged farmers have not been able to get on land. So making sure that those people's voices are being lifted up. Does that make sense to folks?
I'm wondering, could we be more specific with this one? I'm just thinking
Sure.
back, and Rita might have something to add. But we recently went through the Carrot tool scoring exercise, and I think we covered one of the ones that talked about educational resources and stuff. And there seemed to be quite a few that the region and more broadly sort of Southeastern Mass had access to. So are there specifically like training gaps that we're aware of that we could identify here? Or Is land access just an affordability issue? I'm just trying to think if we can make this a little bit more specific. Rita, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that either, maybe based on the carrot stuff.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that, and I was going to pull up what we just scored as well to kind of just jog my memory. I think that this is there. There's a lot of educational resources, and the extensions, to your point, Lydia, is that the extensions, the Buy Fresh, Buy Locals, the CMAPs are massive resources. So I think that awareness piece is key. It still seems like there's a lot of gaps for farmers. I don't know if this comes up later, but specifically there's gaps for other people in the food system, not who aren't just producing food, but makers, processors. Joanne, we talked a bit about like that. So there's still gaps in the support. And then there's significant extra gaps for people who've been historically marginalized. So as in there's general resources and there's some good resources, but then it's a bit of a cliff when you're looking.
I think she froze.
Specifically for historically marginalized BIPOC community members. So I'll pull up our scoring sheet right now to jog more specific. The other thing I was wondering, I don't fully understand what they do or how they work, but it feels like when we've been talking about support for farmers and fishers, the importance of conservation districts has come up. So I don't know if that's something to mention here or if it fits somewhere else, but I just know off the top of my head that that's been mentioned several times as providing some critical support.
Yeah, we were going to add that in, and I think Brenna, it made it in. There's an inactive conservation district within this area, but it could help provide some funding.
Yeah, that's something that I know Nantucket and Bristol County, I think, are both trying to activate or reactivate conservation districts. You don't fully understand if something's happened where they're becoming more effective, but that's come up a couple times.
Okay, we can make sure to add that. And I guess, Rita, maybe, I know y'all have another scoring meeting tomorrow. Do you want to ping us with more specifics that we could put in this strategy? I think, so a couple of things that have come up, I think, just through interviews in relationship to this is I would say like one of the biggest things was when I spoke with Ryan Burke at MDAR about the different farmers who are leasing in the Middleborough and Lakeville properties. Just that there are, one, they're shorter term leases, which makes it hard to invest in capital infrastructure, right? And two, the support and connections of folks, especially when folks are driving from other communities to farm here, and where, are they marketing here, things like that. It just seemed like there were some expanded needs potentially for some of those growers. It didn't seem like it felt like it was really just connecting folks to CMAP and Plymouth County Extension and the beginning farmer courses that exist to World Farmers and other folks like that. To me, it felt more like it was just connecting folks with the resources that were already here and less creating new resources.
I think it's also working because it was like very intentional. So,
Yeah.
A couple of things too is that, MDAR included that as part of the lease. Like when you apply for that lease, they do ask, are you do you belong to like a group of people that has been marginalized? So then those, applications got priority. So that's number one. And then number two, CMAP made like a very specific effort to try to support these new farmers. And then number three, I think, especially for that piece of property in Lakeville, where there's like multiple leasing farmers on one piece of land, if you walk in the situation and everybody there is like white, and then instead, like there's three guys down there that, are all like identifying, like they've kind of like made like their own like posse or group, you know what I mean? So they have like people that they trust to kind of like connect with. So I do think like that was not an accidental occurrence. You know what I mean? So we're looking at that as like a success point, but then understanding that like that all was like years in the making.
Yeah. And maybe we need to acknowledge that a little bit more in our narrative, potentially, of like how that was. Brenna, maybe we can connect if you don't mind putting a little note for me. We can I can send Meg over some notes to make sure that that's actively captured, because I think one of the things that's so important is acknowledging why something has been successful and what those tools are that you all have used. It really is going to speak volumes to what you're able to do in the future, right? Is like how you've been able to get things done in the past. So, Meg, maybe I can ping you via email with a write up, or if you want to send me any bullets to get into the actual document.
Cool.
I also
Okay.
apologize. Meg, the last bit that you said I cut out, so I have it for in connection with 1.b.2, but if I'm wrong on that, let me know.
Sorry.
So the part that's in red, just review that and make sure that that kind of encompasses it. No,
that's from a previous comment. I said to
build collaborative support systems.
I just put a comment to say to connect with you to emphasize the work in the narrative. But I missed the last sentence that you said, so I apologize for that I didn't catch that.
I think I was basically talking about how it was like an intentional, decision that had been many years in the making to create like the support system for these leasing farmers to be successful.
Got it. Okay.
Rita, you have your hand up?
I do. I just was scanning the carrot, and I do think it's interesting. So we looked at a few things like you said, Joanne, there were a few that had a lot of resources, but we actually scored them a little bit lower, like the capacity building in the food system. And the comment was that, so MDAR's in there, county extension, CMAP, but that it sort of it's had a being implemented but not established, and that the comments were because it felt piecemeal. Another one that was interesting, because there were a lot of resources that got identified in the community advisory board meeting, but it scored quite low, are I think what you bring up there in the second recommendation, and maybe it can be a little more explicit, is collective marketing networks for local food, and any programs that create and expand collective marketing networks, including sharing equipment, packing facilities, distribution routes, transportation. And we actually scored that no findings, even though there's quite a few resources. And I can go into details. I'll send you those sections of the PDF, and there's notes in there. So I think that 1B3 could probably be, if we're talking about the same things there, that's one that could be, I think, more explicit. And then just a few, two, just confirming that we were looking at resources available for aspiring BIPOC farmers and producers. And we did call out Land for Good, Young Farmers Network, CMAP, but we listed it as no findings. Because again, it's not directed at the BIPOC community or marginalized community members. So.
And I'm wondering, so in strategy 1B3, this came up in my interview with Susan at CMAP, and Meg, I don't know, just this idea of a local CSA, aggregated CSA, that maybe like CMAP and Coastal Food Shed, a couple other folks had been talking about, like, is there a need that the market isn't filling for this? So I think we definitely do talk later on about aggregation and distribution networks. So we can make sure that in this, the kind of mid-career farmers piece was brought up more around farm viability, of like, how can people who are have been farming for over a decade, so are no longer beginning farmers, how can they have the support around farm viability? And that means so many different things to so many people, but it was really kind of in reaction to the fact that so many farmers who are mid-career have to continue to work off farm and for health insurance, for thanks, Jill. I am going to start sharing for Jill. So let me get back there. Brenna, do you want to share? Or you want me to? You just tell me what is easier. Okay.
I'm going to wait till it's up and running, and then I apologize. I have to go, but thank you all so much for your input on this. If we have an additional session, schedule as what works. Brenna has access to my calendar, and this is great.
Thanks, Jill.
Thanks, Jill.
Yeah, so that was kind of that big piece that was coming up in some of the interviews. Is just like so many people I got to interview had other off-farm jobs, and I know that so many folks who work in these amazing nonprofits are also farmers, and they're also working in nonprofits because you need health insurance, and how do we find ways to support mid-career farmers who are outside of that beginning farmer range where that you get a little bit more support. And that was something that CMAP, I think, is trying to put energy and strategy into. Correct me if I'm wrong, Meg.
No, I mean, we definitely, we joke a lot about the, there's so much support for beginning farmers, and beginning farmers are not always young farmers. But then there's a lot of people who have grown and they're kind of being pulled in a lot of directions. And, it's also the point in life where you're oftentimes, you want to have more secure housing, you want to have kids, you need health insurance, blah, blah, blah. And those people can feel really kind of like stuck in the middle because there's a lot of grants, resources, support, training for the beginning or the younger. And then there's a lot of support in the sense of like successional planning and transitional planning for the older. And then you're kind of just like, just really like in a rock and a hard place in the middle. So yeah, that is a reasonable way to describe it.
Is there such a thing? I mean, there is a farmers union, right? I mean, is there a way that farmers can tap into like a union or an association that offers insurance benefits at a bulk rate for a larger group? Does that exist?
I think with Mass Health there, I don't know. I know the fishing partnership provides support for fisher people to connect them with, so they actually like help, they're like healthcare navigators and community health navigators. So that resource exists in the fishing industry in the study area. I did not hear about that resource existing for land-based farmers in the study area.
There's none that I know about. I mean, I will say that there are people who specifically work on farms in Massachusetts because of Mass Health being as top-notch as it is. So I know that people who are oftentimes like seasonal farm workers, if they had to make a choice in a New England state, that they are going to choose Mass because of Mass Health's ability. Then there's also even farmers who are, I would say, very creative with how they are managing their accounting so that they still qualify for Mass Health themselves. But no, I mean, American Farm Bureau, Mass Farm Bureau is kind of like our collective, like political voice, but there has been no one that has stepped up to the plate and has like basically come through with an option that like small scale farmers could like tap into that would either, meet, or be like better financially than the Mass Health system already is, or Mass Connector as well. So,
and that was something too that we had heard from a couple farmers where, and it applies to some of their farm laborers as well, is sort of suppressing wages to make sure that you can stay on Mass Health. So it becomes this kind of like, we want farms to do better, and they're like, we want to do better too, but then we're not going to qualify for Mass Health, and then there's not another viable option. So I think that's a really important point on a couple different levels there. Another thing, and I don't know that Well, I think this is relevant. I don't know exactly the role, but in talking, this was actually a conversation a little while back now with Susan Murray, but one of the pieces she was talking about, and I put in the comments that one of the things that we had no findings for in the CARET as well is formal mentorship programs for farmers, seafood, and new food business entrants. So there's a lot of resources, but not necessarily formal mentorship. And the conversation that's come up in other counties around that too is that a lot of the mentorship happens informally when you work on a farm, or it happens to peer. But there's also this increasing effect of just farmers are so busy, they're working other jobs, the opportunities for peer-to-peer learning is diminishing. So there is this kind of gap where there's just not, those networks are really eroded for several reasons. And some of the experience that I've had then in Ireland and England, now this is where I don't know the municipality's role, but pubs are considered a really important part of agricultural life because it's where farmers are getting a chance to meet. And there's a pub in England that now gives pints, there's a room upstairs specifically for farmers. All the food is local and from the farms, and farmers get their first pint free. So I feel like it's like, is it in this one too, is formal mentorship what's needed, but certainly looking at how to foster peer-to-peer connection seems really important. So I just wanted to kind of throw that in there. And I also wonder too about the role of granges and whether granges provide any of that. It sounds like they have in the past, but.
Go ahead, Catherine.
So I just wanted to mention there is also another farmland partnership project which is working on that. So Susan is actually leading it to look at like how can we do more on farmer mentorship. And there's actually 5 projects in total across the farmland partnership program. So hopefully we'll have some kind of more solid kind of recommendations on how to encourage peer-to-peer learning and mentorship, both which are important in various different stages. And then another element that is also just like navigators, that the term navigators turned up in the plan. And the concept is like, how do you navigate between all the resources and find the appropriate one and also know where the gaps are? So that's another thing that's being worked on. So I just wanted to mention, I'm sorry, there's not like great answers right now, but these are all big issues that what you're seeing in your region it's across the state. And so we're trying to work on it, small pieces, but hopefully we'll make some good progress and had some good learnings. So I'll put the link into the chat. If anyone's interested, the Farmland Action Plan, I do sign up the newsletter, and as I'll have information to share, you'll get the updates. So
great.
Thanks.
I had to walk away for a minute, but I just wanted to mention, for a historical perspective, when I was a kid, my family, we would get our health care through Mass Farm Bureau. There was an excellent program. But then as the economics of healthcare changed, eventually they abandoned the program. Farm Bureau still supports some property insurance programs, but healthcare has been gone for decades.
Thanks, John. So I think these are all great things, and maybe we will, maybe we can have Susan at CMAP also look this over, since it does directly mention CMAP as a leader in this. And Meg, you could look this over. One mentorship program, Rita, that exists is the Transition to Organic Partnership mentorship program. That's for farmers who are trying to transition from conventional to organic certified farmland. So we can just make sure that's a national program, but NOFA manages the one here in Massachusetts. So we can make sure we add that in as a resource.
Yeah, that would be great.
All right. I'm a little nervous about time, y'all. I feel like we could talk all day.
Forever. I know.
I know.
Are there any, let me ask
these
you
are
this,
so
are there
good.
any
Yeah.
specific ones that you want to talk about today in case we don't get more time?
Sure. All right, let's see. The next, well, there's so many. Maybe let's talk about the infrastructure gap one. Is that okay, folks, if we move down climate resilient one? So this theme 2 is close the infrastructure gap for processing and distribution. I know this was a big a piece of interest for this project. So we really wanted to make sure you all got a chance to look this over. And I will say, like, while there isn't an exorbitant amount of infrastructure within the actual study area, there is actually quite a lot of infrastructure in the region, be like very close to the study area for certain things. So that's the caveat of this, is that one of the things we heard over and over again in interviews is that people were actually like solving their infrastructure problems very well by either getting grants from the state or taking out loans. So it was very impressive what people in your region are doing. And I just want to say that, like, out loud, it's like, I was super duper impressed. So you have amazing people in your area doing great work. So the first is expand the capacity and reach of regional food hubs. There are many food hubs that are near your study area and that potentially serve different parts of the study area. So what we are recommending is to update the food hub service area mapping that was done. I think there was a study done by Coastal Food Shed that Holly Fowler worked on, and there was a map that showed kind of where everybody's reach is, but we need to update that and include newer and expanded reach of Coastal Food Shed, because they're reaching quite a bit of your area, but also so is Boston Food Hub, which is a newer food hub, and World Farmers. Red's Best and Red Tomato and Farm Fresh Rhode Island are also going into many towns within the study area. So we really just want to make sure we understand, is every town and municipality covered by a food hub? That's the first thing that we weren't able to completely identify it. It needs a little bit more, a deeper dive. And the second piece is like, is the demand clear for needing more of a presence after that? So maybe exploring a satellite location for aggregation in the northern part of Plymouth County, which is from our interviews felt like the area that was, because of how close it is to Boston, was reached less by Coastal Food Shed. So does that make sense what I'm saying? Any feedback on that?
Rita
again,
just posted a link that there might be another one coming up in
Yes.
Mashpee.
Sorry. Oh, sorry. And I posted, yeah. So to your point, there's a few that are in the works just outside Plymouth that would impact. But I also posted the Saratoga link I'm more familiar with, but I know that Cornell was doing quite a bit of work. And this was actually what, for us at the Marion Institute, paused some of the work we were doing around looking at a food hub, or what we are calling a food innovation district in New Bedford, is that there are all of these food hubs in the works and being discussed and being recognized as a really important part of the puzzle. But the work being done out of Cornell was looking at what happens when you get too many food hubs popping up too close to each other, and did some pretty extensive math. And so again, I don't know exactly how this plays in, but somewhere along the way, if it's not in here, maybe it is just using some of the numbers that they've used to understand, what do we need to know about the demand and the supply and the reach and all that. So.
Right, because everyone we talked to had more capacity, right? And you don't want to build a brand new food hub if Boston Food Hub, World Farmers, and Coastal Food Shed and Farm Fresh Rhode Island can actually cover the area with the existing infrastructure, right?
Yeah.
And the coordination tools. Like, you don't want to start from scratch. That's kind of where we were, where we landed. And that's why, I think keeping your eye on it and making sure that communities that aren't getting great access understand that both the businesses of the food hubs and the communities and producers understand that there are resources there. So that's one. And then the next was kind of focusing on collaboration across the existing food hubs, regional food pantries, and other food access service providers. And this was really about making sure that these different food access tools understand the work of one another. And I think it really shows that, so there are three kind of emergency food provider hubs in your region. South Shore Community Action Council, Damien's, and South Shore Food Bank. Is that right? I think that's the third. And so those act as hubs for emergency food. So just making sure that the food hubs and those regional food, emergency food providers and food access service providers really understand what they're each doing around food access. I think that would really help with some coordination as well. So again, this is just about conducting additional outreach with service providers and making sure people really understand what's existing in the region and getting feedback. I mean, I think that I've mentioned this, the interview with the Herring Pond tribe. You know, there have to be ways for people to give feedback on the quality of what's being provided as well, to make sure we're doing, everybody's doing a great job. The next strategy is about providing outreach to identify food businesses who want to expand and provide assistance for grant funding applications. And this is all food business. It is, you know, a lot of the farm stores we interviewed or food trucks, people like that, they were connecting to grant funding to be able to build out their businesses. The next is about identifying new funding pathways at the local and regional level for staffing at food pantries to expand capacity. This is, you know, coming out of Alyssa's work. It just sounded like there's a deep need for funding staffing to build systems because it's always responsive when there isn't that ability to build long-term strategy. We're always just responding to the next crisis, right? The next strategy is about exploring co-locating food waste and or composting facilities with regional food hubs. This is happening at Damien's and was a really exciting model that they're bringing Black Earth, like a community compost drop to their location. So just seeing how we can build more collaboration across different parts of the food system. And especially if it would be helpful to these regional hubs, emergency food folks also who may have to compost things if they're expired, or quality control. So just making sure that we're like building those connections. Working with the Massachusetts Department of Transportation to identify improvements for freight trucking routes and find suitable locations for supportive infrastructure like rest stops, local food options adjacent to major routes. Many times, like people brought up just, you know, how hard it is to get to different parts in the study area. So making sure that trucking routes are really supported for getting product in and out of the study area. Working to expand trucking infrastructure for loading and unloading at local food hubs and pantries in the region to expand their capacity for food delivery and storage. You know, right now it seems like South Shore Community Action Council and other folks are providing like kind of cross-docking for Greater Boston Food Bank and just trying to really understand like, is there more need in the future as food security is on the rise? Go ahead, Catherine.
Just
Yep.
Sorry about that. Wrong computer. So just thinking back to my old world, I used to work in transportation, and my question is, I love this idea of working with Mass DOT to think about the freight trucking, but one of my questions is there also a first mile, last mile issue? So for example, like I was in a town where like there was a critical bridge which was needed to an access to a particular farm, and you couldn't cut it off because like you couldn't, the extra mileage involved to take the milk, for example, would have made a massive difference. So I think it might be useful to also highlight local relationships with municipalities who may have jurisdiction of the more local first mile, last mile. It may not be an issue. If it's not, great, but I know from my experience in Vermont, it sometimes was. So.
Okay.
Thanks.
That did come up as well. So thank you for pointing that out. That was mostly that came out of the Massachusetts Freight Action Plan from 2023, looking at like the critical corridors and the different wear and tear that trucking has on it, and some of those like more rural farm locations are very challenging for trucks to get in and out of.
Yeah, that was good to see. I noticed that you guys cited that study a bunch of times in your work, so that's good. And the food access and community health study as well, as far as getting people to food as well as food to people.
Yeah. Another piece about, just capacity, like being able to expand the capacity and reach of regional food hubs, is working with the local chambers of commerce and CMAP to expand the marketing for their local food guide to a regional buy local campaign. And I think this is kind of again, you can push back on this strategy as much as you want, but the real thing that we're trying to identify in this is just how do we get more people buying local, make it easier to buy local, because what we were seeing is for farm viability, a lot of the smaller farms need retail pricing for their work or for their product, and the most expensive thing is labor. And so going to all the farmers markets and things like that does really increase your cost of production. So how are we, working across sectors to build a bigger community of people that want to buy in local food? So please push back if you have other ideas.
Lady, did anyone mention any of the it's funny because I don't know of any in Plymouth. I know in Boston and I know around us, but I can't think of the name, but there's a Vermont, the delivery, the like in between, where farmers are getting like 80% instead of wholesale at 50 or retail at 100%. And then there's family dinner would be one in Boston. So did you come across any of those or any comments on those?
No, and Family Dinner does actually distribute. They come into the study area in part, not completely, but partially in the study area they deliver.
Do they source from Plymouth, do you know?
There were some farms.
Yeah, I had talked to Erin about some sourcing down in our area, and I think originally it had been on the table, but then just because of it's just a lot easier if they stay up kind of on the North Shore for most of their sourcing. So it's not that they're against it. It's just that right now it doesn't really make the most sense as far as them traveling down here, and they can get most of the things that they want up there.
Yeah.
And I think again, this is where the regional food hubs could create partnerships, right? With a family dinner and things like that, where, you have a certain set of values that they want from family dinner, and the regional food hub can help with that aggregation. So maybe we could kind of add to this as look to partner with more or expand partnerships with home delivery services, meal services, and things like that. Yeah, and I actually I never, Meg, you might know this with some of the livestock producers, but I didn't hear anybody who's working with Walden Local or Walden Local Meats or anybody like that.
No, Walden Local doesn't actually they have very specific farms that they work with in the Northeast, and they have their own processing plants and things like that. So they're not branching out beyond the basically partner farms that they utilize. We used to have a South Shore base. It was similar to Family Dinner. And when Family Dinner came online, the woman who had, it was called South Shore. I can't even remember the name. Because what's her name? She runs the Quincy Food Pantry now. There used to be a service similar to Family Dinner down here. And then Erin, all of her customers, their information was turned over to Erin to see if they wanted to kind of come under her umbrella. But I mean, we used to have basically our own version of that, and it had been around for probably close to a decade before they just couldn't make it work. So,
and I think that there was somebody in Brockton too who was doing
Digger Foods.
Yes.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, they have called it quits also.
Yes, they have. Yeah.
And I think that's too, is it that a family dinner is needed? I think it's also, or, why are some of the other ones not working? But I think it's also just more of a plug to, I suppose, keep asking the question, is there some model in between wholesale and retail that solves some of those things that you were talking about, Lydia, for farmers that
Yeah, I think Coastal Food Shed's doing it. I think they're offering the pricing that people need. From what I could tell, I mean, our um, they're not going, and then it looks like Ward's Berry Farm, who's outside of the area, is also providing a lot of product for other growers that they might need in their farm stores. I will say that the variety of what farm stores are carrying is really different. You look at a Langwater farm who's got like a really strong value set of like who they're buying from. And then there are farm stores that do not have that same value set. And so I think, that's just like the diversity of the market that exists in the area. Folks that really are like, we want it all to be New England based or Massachusetts or South Shore or whatever. They really are kind of putting that in their value statement and making sure that they're educating their customers around that. And so for Coastal Food Shed, for example, like they're doing that education for both their customers and the producers they're buying from. I think they are getting the farmers the pricing that they need to be viable. It seems like it's deeply part of their work. I know World Farmers similarly does that. I did not interview Boston Food Hub, but we could also check with them as well.
And I wonder too if it's, oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, finish your thought.
Oh, I was just going to say that this goal is really about regional food hubs. And then the next one is kind of going down to farm to institution and then emergency food. So just wanted to make sure that like this specific strategy is just about the food hubs, right?
And I wonder here too, and I don't know if it fits under the section or if it comes elsewhere, but I think so. If I remember rightly from the survey results, folks had said that they often couldn't identify local foods sometimes when they were out shopping in regular marketplaces, that they weren't like obvious enough. And I think it's important because I think a lot of times when I think about buying local food, I think about going to the farm or the farm stand where there's a few local stores in the region that stock only local products. But larger food retailers like your grocery stores and stuff too, like I think there might be an opportunity to help them improve not only what they carry locally, but potentially also how they're marketing the fact that they're carrying local stuff.
Right. And there's not great language around, local. I think it's very co-opted often. I mean, you go into a farm store and it could say local or our own, or, people it's really subjective. It's kind of like the natural term,
Yep.
It's really hard. And unless, an organization, maybe CMAP wants to really like have some kind of like certification or some kind of marketing that people are really like buying into, it's really hard to.
Well, I mean, CMAP does their like local food guide annually that's online and it's in print and it's basically distributed all through like our region. And I think, one of the things that they do, what part of the whole process is them trying to like call places and vet places and see if, in reality, they really are local. So even though it's not really like a stamp of approval or certification or things like that, I mean, like that's basically like their way of like directing people towards quote unquote, like what is local.
It's just that it makes it sort of an additional step, right? You need the guide to be able to research where the places are, and then you have to proactively go to them as opposed to just walking into your nearest market and already identify, like being able to obvious what is in
Well,
it.
I mean, I think another thing too is that like, it's kind of like who are you marketing towards? Because then, we of course we have like a level of very educated consumers who are farmers market supporters, CSA supporters. They recognize brands of like who is local, but then you have people that are, if you're talking about like a more general public stand where, what is local, like they don't recognize farm names. They don't know who, like, so for example, like Walden Meats, for example, I get lots of people all the time who are like, oh, what farmers in our region are in Walden Meats? And it's like, they don't do that. Like, that's actually not like a thing, So, I guess it's like who is your target audience, in that?
I think it's also something that we've reminded ourselves we are doing this kind of, promoting local food out on Nantucket is, I mean, this feels like such a big gap, and it's kind of like hit or miss how different people are doing it, but it's up against like you're up against companies that are spending hundreds of millions of dollars to make sure that their products are recognizable. And so it's just one of those, it's like it's so entirely underfunded all around. Um, and not cohesive enough just because of the nature of it being, smaller producers. And I think that there are like Walden has done a good job of getting their brand name out there. Is it necessarily? So there's examples of organizations that have done it well, being small organizations, but it's totally underfunded. And I think really one of the biggest issues. I did want to point out too, I've never been, but they really stood out to me just in the comments from the Community Advisory Board discussions. I think it's Vicenti's supermarket. I don't know how they present local, but Vicenti's came out, and then actually Kronig's out on the Vineyard are two of the kind of, oh, sorry, and then Lee's and Westport jumped out as retail spots that do pretty well promoting local. I think Kronig's has a community grocery fund where you can like buy olive oil, like you can buy for people who wouldn't have it, so they're addressing food insecurity. I think Vicenti's has like an incubator and maybe a food is medicine thing. So there are a couple examples of retailers in the region that are, kind of trying to figure it out and really promoting it. But I think it is a massive beast for all the reasons that everyone just
Yeah,
mentioned.
Trukey's, which is like an ultra local South Shore thing. They have like I think 4 locations. They were doing like a farmer spotlight where the things that were local like had like the farmer's pictures, like a description of the farm, so they tried to do that. They cut that program when it turned out that it was actually like completely not and really comparatively viable as far as like how much they were paying to bring that stuff in. But so there have been some attempts like on a smaller scale to bring into some of our more like traditional retail outlets. But there are a number of like smaller scale markets, like a little bit more custom high end small scale markets that do, buy directly.
Great. That's helpful. And I mean, I think, yes, we are talking about very small scale compared to Coca-Cola and all the folks, definitely helpful.
One other
Put that in
thing,
perspective.
sorry, that I wanted to throw in that was just a massive gap. I'm not sure that it would be a recommendation at all, but just something to note that co-ops are glaringly missing from Southeastern Mass when it comes to food, and clearly been successful Vermont, Maine, other places. But that's just a glaring, I don't know that it should be a recommendation, but it's very much missing.
Yeah, and there was an initiative in Brockton for a long while to try and start up a food co-op. But I think it's staffing and funding issues that kind of it gets a little attention, then it fizzes out because people come and go.
Mhm. Great. These are helpful. All right. I know we're over time, so I just want to check and see how people are doing. I think the big things here, farm to institution connections, I think we just spoke about many of the issues that are also facing farm to institution work. Meg, you're listed here, so I just want to make sure you feel okay about this. But one of the things we felt like is like ag education and school gardens, things like that, 4-H. Those are really like the foundation of getting kids excited about local food. So we really did want to make sure that municipalities and districts understand the resources that are here in the community. And same with, some of the statewide programs like the Mass Fresh Grant and Harvest of the Month, things like that. We want to really just make sure those are being utilized to their full capacity before any other recommendations. And there are multiple organizations that are doing school gardening work, including Marion and Holly Hill and others. And Karen Berry left, but there are a lot of other folks who are also trying to bring more attention to local farming for families as well. So we just want to make sure we lift those up first.
Yeah, and one thing I wanted to say too was as far as like co-ops, Healthy Appetites in Plymouth, they're like, I mean, I'm gonna like loosely use the term co-op, you know what I mean? They will have, you know, different places come in as like a retail outlet to sell. And then like during like COVID, we've had like farmers market shutdowns. They were having like farmers like just directly, you know, set up, pop up, you know, so they have done like a little bit in that space. Then as far as, you know, farm education or farm to institution connections, you know, obviously, yes, we do have some nonprofits that are in the game, you know, as far as like Holly Hill. The trustees do some farm education down in our region. You know, obviously 4-H. We do have like a lot of, I would say, like homesteading families that do some like agricultural education. So for example, there's like a small scale like farm school, homeschool farm school at a farm called Gem. You know, Soul Homestead Education Center, which, you know, is kind of like going through a change a little bit, but, you know, they do some agricultural education. Obviously, Bristol Aggie is trying to play like a big role as far as being like an umbrella for to like tuck, you know, organizations up underneath. You know, and then like the farm to school program, I know that Bristol Aggie has received the Fresh grant. There's another organization, what's it called, is no longer here, that had been here. What was that? Like not AmeriCorps, Food Corps, you know, Food Corps has kind of like pulled out of our region. So there are some schools like the like New Bedford, you know, school district in order to kind of like make up for like the loss of Food Corps, kind of develop like their own program. So they have, you know, in school farm to, you know, or garden educators that they've kind of created. You know, again, Marion Institute does quite a bit of in-school programming in that area too. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different choices. I would say there's not just like one game in town, which is great. Mass Ag in the Classrooms trying to do, they do some work in our region as well. Yeah, I think that's off the top of my head.
Those are great. Those are great. And how about working through the Agricultural Youth Council? MDAR has that set up. There's 15 kids in the state. That would be a great way to send messages to the communities, the parents, school systems, and give them more of a role. Show them how important they really are in the overall farming and food picture. That's your future. Yeah, they came to the Ag Commission. Meetings. Yeah.
I think the last group of 15, I want to say that 5 of them were from our region out of the 15. So we are actually like obscenely well represented in Southeastern Mass. A big part of that is because we have the largest 4-H presence in the state. And then also Bristol Aggie is very supportive in that region as well too. And they know that there is FFA presence as well. You know, FFA is that, you know, like they're doing like plant sales and things like that through like South Shore Votech. And so there is, you know, obviously Bristol Aggie as well. So, I mean, there is like that piece of it too.
Okay, I think I'm going to call it here because we're past time. Do you guys want to find another time to meet, to keep talking? Or do we all want to just submit our written comments to Barrett at this point? And we're still going to have time to work on it through the public comment period as well too, of course.
Yeah. Whatever works for y'all. I mean, I think the big things that we have left are around food access is the last theme that is yeah, if you
shorter compared to the other themes.
Sorry, Brenna, what did you say?
This third theme, food access and equity, is relatively shorter than others. So I know I've been cutting out pretty badly this whole meeting.
Okay. Why don't we get our written comments over to you guys?
Okay.
And we still have, I believe if I'm looking at the calendar, we still have a meeting on the 27th. So if there are any comments that anybody is really burning to kind of expound upon beyond what they write to Barrett, we can set aside a little bit of time on the 27th to talk about those. And at that point, I think the public plan will be out by that point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So we can just talk about in general, anything else
Starts
we
on the
want to.
22nd.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Catherine?
Can I just check what the deadline is? Sorry, I've been trying to keep up, but I don't always keep track of deadlines right now as well as I could. Because either I can review it now ahead of what goes out as public comment, or I can just review as part of public comment, and I don't mind which way around. So,
but you're probably not going to have time to do both, right?
Probably no.
Yeah. I kind of feel like I would, and again, Lydia, please, if you disagree, or Barrett, let me know, but I kind of feel like the public comment side might be better, because in the group and all of our comments will have been cleaned up and integrated.
That sounds great.
But what do you think, Lydia? I think you think the opposite.
I just was going to say, for folks on the steering committee, like, because we've had conversations with a lot of you and you all, again, know the region so well, we would love your comments earlier, I think, if possible, just because we want these to be as clear as possible for the public. You know, we want to make sure that we're not misrepresenting anything, don't have anything confused. You know, it just will help us. If we have anything incorrect, you know, those are the kinds of things we want to really like make sure we're not putting anything out there that's incorrect.
So if that is the case, what's the timeline for getting that back to you?
We would like the edits to be completed by the 20th. Is that right, Brenna? That's the date I have that you sent over.
That would be for our edits. Ideally,
that's right.
Comments would be back from the steering committee and CAB members and anyone else, Joanne, that you've sent to by the 15th.
Thanks, Brenna.
Okay. I will then try from my perspective to at least triage things as much as I can, but I'll probably have to do a more deeper dive later. I mean, what I'm saying is like it's really great, and it's just a few tweaks to like just get things.
Okay.
I really love what you're doing, and thank you for letting me join this conversation. Like,
well, thank you for
not
joining,
being the other ones.
Yeah.
So,
was there anything that stood out to you that maybe you haven't heard from all your work across the state?
No, I think I will check because I skim read, but very, very fast. I think this is aligning with what I'm hearing in other parts in pieces. And what I love about what your plan is doing is it's really like honing in on like, hey, therefore, what should our next step look like? And this also aligns quite well with, I went to the Taunton River discussion, which Karen was hosting, and there's quite a few overlaps there too. So
we've been talking a lot to her.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of recurring things, but what I also love is you're getting to specifics, like what does this really mean? And so thank you for letting me be part of it, and like thank you.
Thanks, Catherine. For you guys, Lydia and Brenna, I just have a quick question. So in the draft plan as it exists right now, you've got the recommendation section, which we were all just reviewing, and then you follow it with an implementation section. What does that look like to you guys? Is that a table where you're going to have like timeline, priority, lead partner, potential supporters, like a typical action plan kind of implementation plan? Is that what you're envisioning?
That is what our plan is. And usually we build that out as like an Excel sheet. We send it. We fill into the best of our knowledge what we think might happen. We send it to you all. You fact check us and say, no, actually, that will not work. And that way it sort of lives as like a spreadsheet that you can edit and then track as you are implementing the plan.
Yep. And that, you think, though, you'll have a draft of that in the version that goes out for the public?
Yes. And that would be more of just like a static table.
Yeah, perfect. But that gives us an opportunity to check people who are assigned to different things that they're comfortable with that.
Oh, definitely before it's published. Yeah.
So perfect.
I mean, we really want to make sure that you all feel comfortable with this. So say no, right? Like,
no, good.
Take it out, right? Like, I think we don't want you to have this and then, 6 months later, somebody's knocking at your door saying it says here that if you don't agree to it.
And I'll say to them, you should have read my email. We wanted to confirm this was okay with you. Awesome. Okay. Anything else from anybody before we close off? Thank you so much, y'all, for your time, Meg, especially. I know
Thank
it's a
you.
lot of time and we really appreciate it.
I
Absolutely.
just can't believe that you guys do this as like your full-time jobs. Like, it's very impressive.
All right.
Well,
Take
thank
care,
you
everybody.
all.
Thank you.
Really appreciate you.
Okay.
Bye.